Welcome everyone to the July 10th meeting of the Santa Rosa City Council. Ms. Gomez, would you announce the roll, please?
Let the record show that all council members are present with the exception of Councilmember Combs.
Thank you. And just for those who may be here for this item, item 9.2.1, the request for an agenda item regarding city rent stabilization ordinance that was put forward 2 weeks ago by Ms. Combs is going to be pulled from the agenda tonight. We will be talking about the petitions for a rent control ordinance that have been turned in recently to the county registrar of voters. We'll be talking about that on July 24th. But this item will not be addressed tonight as some people might be expecting. That's 9.2.1. We had no closed session today. We have no study session. We have no proclamations or presentations, so we'll go to staff briefings. Mr. McGlynn.
So this is going to be very brief this evening. We're going to be trying to, we're trying to arrange to have Cal OES come to next week's meeting and give a fuller update, especially around the debris, the over excavation program. However, I do want to make an announcement that the County of Sonoma Recovery and Resiliency Community Workshop are taking place. The County of Sonoma will begins the first of 6 planned community engagement workshops this evening to collect public input to shape their recovery and resiliency plan. The workshops will focus on 5 strategy areas. 1, community preparedness of infrastructure. 2, housing. 3, the economy. 4, natural resources. 5, safety net services. The workshop dates and locations are as follows. July 10th, the County Office of Education in Santa Rosa. July 11th, the Sebastopol Center for the Arts in Sebastopol. July 25th, the Petaluma Community Center. August 2nd, the Finley Community Center in Santa Rosa. August 8th, the Veterans Building in Sonoma. Spanish language workshop is also being planned, and that date is to be announced. The county will share information gained through the workshops with the city and other jurisdiction agencies. We have several members of our staff attending this evening's workshop. And that concludes this evening's update.
Thank you. Move on to 6.2.
6.2, Creek Stewardship Program Update. Aaron Nunez, Natural Resources Specialist, presenting.
Just want to remind everybody to get close to the microphones this evening. We've got the air conditioning's off. We have fans behind us and they're making some noise. And don't forget to turn it on.
There we go. Does that work?
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, so I know we are well underway with 2018, but I'm here to give you an update on 2017 Creek Stewardship Program and how that went for us. So, yeah, we have over 90 miles of creeks throughout the city limits. And as our creeks move closer towards the downtown corridor, they become more integrated into a heavy urban interface. And what makes the city of Santa Rosa pretty unique is we have 30 miles of creeks with pedestrian trails where people can get outside and enjoy the environment, use it as a mode of transportation to get to work, bring their children out to enjoy nature, walk their dog, get exercise. So extremely valuable asset to our community are our creeks and our creek trails. And as a natural resources specialist for stormwater and creeks, I really think my job is to find a balance between public function and ecological function of our creeks and really take advantage of these valuable assets. Because, you know, we have great public function, but we also, you know, our creeks are very rich in species, in steelhead trout and western pond turtles, river otter, migratory birds flying on the Pacific Flyway. So it's a matter of protecting both public function and ecological function. And our creek stewardship program is a joint program between the Sonoma County Water Agency and our stormwater and creek section with the city of Santa Rosa. And our goal is to maintain clean and safe creeks for our community. Now I'm going to talk a lot about cubic yards. And so I just wanted to give you this reference of mind right here of what a cubic yard really looks like here. So if this individual is 6 feet tall, so a cubic yard is 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet. So just to give you kind of a reference. Volunteers are a huge asset to our creek stewardship program. In the year 2017, they removed almost 130 cubic yards of trash from our waterways, directly out of the water or along the high water mark of our creek banks. They really are our eyes and ears of our creeks. You know, at any given time, stormwater and creek staff, we have about 4 full-time staff members and maybe 2 interns that can respond to creek-related issues, trash issues, invasive species, and things like that. So having volunteers is really vital to the success of our program. And it also creates a sense of ownership for people who come out and walk the creek next to their neighborhood or next to their house and then come out during a cleanup event, and it really gives them a sense of ownership of that stretch of creek. Education is another huge aspect of our creek stewardship program. I really believe in a bottom-up approach when it comes to our creek stewardship, and what I mean by that is really focusing on educating our local students and teaching them about healthy creeks, what a healthy creek looks like, what an unhealthy creek looks like as well, and being able to tell the difference, expose them to our creeks. So we do things like creek bioassessments where these children right here are actually doing a measurement of phosphates in our creeks, as well as trash cleanups and learning about our local watershed. And then we also have Youth Corps. We usually have one in the summer and one in the fall. One is funded through the Sonoma County Water Agency and another through the city of Santa Rosa. We work with social advocates for youth as well as Conservation Corps of North Bay, and really focusing on career development of young individuals who are moving into the workforce and working on their careers, teaching them about native ecology education, giving them work experience. And we also really focus on invasive removal, so mostly blackberry and English ivy, privet, and other things. And in 2017, they removed over 45 cubic yards of invasive species, as well as 80 cubic yards of trash, and covered over 23 miles of our creek trail system, which I think is pretty impressive for one summer. When it comes to removing trash in our waterways, I see supervised adult crews or SAC crews as our kind of our heavy hitters, our bulldozers for when it comes to getting trash out of our waterways. So we work with Sonoma County Probation and hire supervised adult crews, usually about 8 to 10 individuals for about a 7-hour workday. And it's extremely efficient use of staff time where I myself can be out for a full day with 10 other individuals, and we cover really large areas throughout the city, removing the nastiest spots where the most trash has accumulated in our creeks. And they removed, in 2017, 69% of all trash for stormwater and creeks. So they're really, there are heavy hitters to get all the trash out. And here's an analysis of trash removed in 2017. So we removed over 1,000 cubic yards of trash directly in our waterways or along the banks of our creeks. So if you, just to put that in perspective, that's about almost 50 garbage trucks. So that garbage truck that comes in your front yard and picks up that bin every morning, or not, once a week in the morning, it's about 50 of those completely compacted of trash. So just imagine that much. And that's how much we removed stormwater in creeks. Quite possibly more alarming is the needles. We removed almost 1,400 needles from directly in the water or along the banks, 113 cubic yards of metal, shopping carts, and things like that. And I wanted to point out that this is what stormwater and creeks removed from our waterways, not Public Works crews or Parks and Rec or even Sonoma County Water Agency, who has their own cleaning crews. So this is just what we removed from our waterways in the city limits. So that sounded a little doom and gloom, but I think this is kind of a positive graphic here. So these columns are broken up into quarters, And we began in, the first quarter is in 2016, March of 2016, and that's when we were really starting to keep track of our trash removal data. So starting from then, it's pretty clear, you can see a trend where we are actually finding less trash in our waterways, despite actually in 2017, we had more cleaning events than 2016. So we went out more times to clean up trash, and we're still seeing a downward trend in the actual trash that we are removing. So I think this is a positive note to look at, and I think this really is attributed to the interagency cooperation between Stormwater and Creeks, Public Works, Police, Parks and Rec, and Sonoma County Water Agency, and really cooperating all together to work on this issue. And I think this graphic really shows that we are making a positive impact. So this is a typical trash load I can get with a supervised adult crew, and we can do about 3 to 4 of these in one day in a creek. So just wanted to kind of give you that as an image. And there's different ways that we do find trash. This is after a high rain event, so the floodwaters rose and then came down, and there's this debris jam at Santa Rosa Creek just downstream of Farmers Lane. So you can see trash gets washed into debris jams, and I wanted to show you this image. There's quite a bit of trash, not a lot, but I found quite a bit of hypodermic needles and things like that in this specific debris jam, and we used our supervised adult crews to remove it. This image here is right along the Prince Memorial Greenway in a spot where hundreds of people probably walk or ride their bike or jog every day, and there's this fence with ivy along that's hidden. So seclusion areas like this, you would never know that just on the other side we have so much trash being dumped and we have these issues. So this is quite a bit of trash, but definitely not something out of the ordinary that we deal with on a weekly basis right along the Greenway. And this image here is of Russell Creek right under Mendocino Avenue next to the Kaiser Hospital. So this is actually where Russell Creek goes underground into a storm drain. So we removed this in 2017. I think it's important to note that, people do live in our storm drain system. That is a thing that is happening, and it's a chronic issue. So this is in 2017, and here is the exact same spot in 2018. I believe I cleaned this up in March of 2018. We are working towards getting exclusionary barriers in certain areas where we have noticed chronic dumping and camping inside storm drain systems to get these iron rod fences established where you can't walk into them anymore, but we'll lift them up during high flood events to limit or to increase flood capacity. And I attribute a lot to our success in removing so much trash from our waterways in our waterway information application. And what this is, I took a snapshot. So this is a live time application where I can get on this on my desktop or even on my phone out in the field. And what it is this live app where at any given moment, I can see exactly where trash issues are accumulating on our creek system throughout the entire city limits. So a creek steward can be out and send an email to someone or just to our creek's email and say, hey, I was out at Paulin Creek and I noticed a lot of trash just downstream of Fulton Road. And one of us can put a point on there and put the notes that they sent in the email, the date and time. And with cleanup crews, we can accumulate all of this and I can come through and pick off these points one by one. And it's a great way to just stay organized with how much trash is being accumulated in our creeks. It can get kind of overwhelming from time to time, especially with only, me going out for cleanups just to keep this all organized. And police can also go on if they're just out doing patrols and they noticed a bunch of trash at a trailhead or something like that. They can get on and post as well. So it's a way for everyone to have this constant communication with our trash issue. And here's just a close-up of when you click on a point, you can see the date, the time, when it was cleaned up, who cleaned it up. You can put notes like how many cubic yards it was, what type of trash it was, and things like that. You can add photos also. So it's a very powerful tool, and I think it's done wonders for our cleanup efforts. And I want to end today with just saying that I know we aren't going to remove all the trash in our creeks. If I came into this job thinking we were going to remove every single piece of trash, I probably would have quit a while ago, just because it's not tangible, and we're never going to get to that point. However, again, I think my goal as a natural resource specialist is to find this balance of public and ecological function, and I think it's pretty impressive to see what Santa Rosa has done with our creeks today, and how our citizens have embraced our creek system and really care for them and become creek stewards and really wanted to adopt our creeks. And I think, so this is right at Flat Rock Park, Santa Rosa Creek, and I'd be willing to say that many other cities that are of equal population or more probably can't get a picture like this as easy as we can. You know, this looks like it's out of a Nature magazine. And I think it's pretty impressive that we as a city value our creeks this much and have really focused on maintaining their health. And I'll end with just saying that we have First Saturday cleanups, the first Saturday of every month from 10 to 12 at Olive Park. If anyone ever wants to get involved, we have our 34th annual Sonoma County Creek to Coast cleanup, as well as Flat Rock Park Volunteer Day, and it's actually December 9th. That was a typo on my end, so I apologize for that. And that's all I have for you.
Thank you, Mr. Nunez. And I appreciate the picture of Flat Rock. That helps balance things out. Our waterways are the reason that we live here. That's like any place, people settled near waterways, and we've made them a lot more accessible over the last 25 or 30 years, which comes with some issues, but it's great to see that we're working with volunteers and others to take care of it. Are there any questions, Council? Yes, Mr. Tibbetts.
Just a quick comment. I was trying to pull it up on my phone, but my screensaver was that exact shot of Flat Rock for quite some time. And I really want to say thank you, and thank you, Alistair, for the work you do out there all the time. I remember when the Young Democrats joined a few years ago and got to clean that creek with you guys. And just the other day, my girlfriend and I were down there with our dog, and we saw an otter. And I was like, what the heck? There's an otter in this creek. That's so cool. So right on. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Sweathelm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. You do great work. It's also my understanding that the state of California is mandating the quality of the water. And I know your presentation is more about the cleanup, but I'm interested with those state standards that are coming. That my understanding may be that it's not funded, but how does that intersect with the efforts that your group is doing?
Do you want to talk on
Trash, so, zero trash.
Yeah, so we're attempting to get to zero trash, essentially, and I know that's a pretty difficult goal. So we're working on ways to focus where the most problem areas are in our waterways and focus on removing trash in those certain areas.
But is there going to be more? I think there's another council member and I went on a creek tour, and they were talking about, when the state mandates this, even a cigarette butt could potentially put us in violation of that. And I'm just interested, are we doing a community engagement type of exercise to let the public know that we need their help in keeping our creeks clean, especially with some pending state mandates? In other words, I'd love to have the conversation now versus, because my understanding was maybe by 10 years from now we need to have this clarity of our water, but I'd be interested in seeing what can we do now prior to that.
In terms of community engagement, we do go out on Wednesday night markets, and we do have an outreach team who goes out and does explain the problems with trash in our waterways, and I think they do a fantastic job. So we do go out to events like the Wednesday night market and table for things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks again.
Thank you.
Moving on, any report from city manager?
Nothing to report.
And city attorney?
Nothing to report.
All right, we'll move on to council members. Anyone have council member reports? Mr. Tibbetts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One thing I just wanted to say to the council was I spoke with some folks, representatives of the Veterans Group, and they wanted to say thank you to the council for adding that into the budget at the last minute. In fact, one lady said, Thank you so much. A lot of veterans are going to make their VA appointments now, and so I just wanted to communicate that to you and say thank you. The other thing is Healdsburg, Mayor Brigitte Mansell reached out to some of us pretty close to the bond issue, and they're going to be pursuing a housing bond in Healdsburg as well. And Sue, I don't know if you got the email while you're on vacation, but she had asked if we could just communicate with them. I think they're looking to our leadership to basically give them an ordinance and more or less copy and paste Healdsburg for Santa Rosa. So I was just hoping that we could be sure to do that, because I think that's pretty exciting that we're taking these steps and there's another city following suit.
And we're happy to work with Healdsburg on the issue, so we're on it.
Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to make two quick appointments and a couple of thank yous. I have two people who have served on committees from me since I came into office and done a really fantastic job that have received opportunities to go elsewhere and do bigger and better things. So a quick thank you to Rocio Rodriguez, who was appointed to the Measure O committee. She actually has been accepted to Columbia University for grad school. And so I'll be replacing her on Measure O with Mike Stapp, and then, Mark Stapp, and then we will also be saying goodbye to Jasmine Gudinho, who is on the Community Advisory Board, who also got into school at Berkeley and will be leaving us as well. And I'll be replacing her with Mike Varela, effective at their next meetings. So just a huge thank you to those who have served and for those who are stepping up.
Thank you. Ms. Schwedhelm, did you have anything? I have a couple things. I haven't been to a meeting in a couple of weeks, and part of that was been to Sacramento a couple times in the last few weeks to testify before Senate committees in support of Assemblymember Wood's AB 2267. Got that through the Environmental Quality Committee of the Senate and also the Judicial Committee, and we'll see how that goes. It's a streamlining issue for downtown infill, transit-oriented development, and we're working hard on that. A couple weeks ago, I was at the League of Cities Executive Leadership Conference in Monterey with a couple of other council members. Councilmember Vice Mayor Rogers and Councilmember Combs were there. Spoke on a panel involving relationships between council members, city managers, and department heads. It was an interesting panel. Also had an opportunity to encourage the CEO of CalPERS to invest some of their billions of dollars of investment funds into housing in downtowns of cities throughout the state. Seems like a win-win proposition. Yesterday, the Sonoma County Transportation Authority met. The most significant news out of that meeting is, and some of you may have read this over the weekend in the paper, but the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Committee has filed suit against RM3, the regional bridge toll measure that will be providing significant benefits to Sonoma County, including money for Highway 101 through the Narrows, money for this expansion of the smart train system, money for Highway 37 and other projects. This is an attack on a measure that the voters had spoken on last month, and that is key to the kind of support we need, revenue to keep our infrastructure going for the people who live in this region. And it kind of gets paired with the recall of Senate Bill 1, the gas tax measure. That's going to be on the November ballot. And I think it's really important for us as a community, as a city, as a council, to be able to articulate the value of these revenue sources to the people who live here in our city. These monies are going to be able to help us fix our roads, expand our transit, fix our highways, and repeal of those is going to have a bad effect. It's going to be felt, it's going to be seen, and we're going to be dealing with the consequences for a long time to come if those are successful. So that's just a little editorial there. On Saturday, I went to a little event at the rural cemetery, which was nice, put on by our Recreation and Parks Department and the Volunteer Preservation Committee of the rural cemetery. They placed a headstone on the grave of Bertolt and Mary Hohen. And Barney Hohen, as he was known, was an immigrant, and he and Mary were city father and city mother. And he donated with Julio Carrillo the land that originally was Courthouse Square. It was nice to see his gravestone restored as the square has been restored, and it was a nice event. And finally, I just want to announce that I will not be seeking election to the District 4 council seat in November. I expect to be looking for other ways to contribute to the community when next year comes around, and still got about 5 months left in this term. There's plenty of work to do in those 5 months, so let's get to it. 9.2.1, as I earlier announced, is being pulled from this agenda. We'll be dealing with the rent stabilization petition submission on July 24th. We have no minutes to approve. Moving on to consent. Mr. McGlynn.
Yes, 11.1, motion, contract award, accessibility alterations at Galvin Park. 11.2, resolution authorizing the director of the Office of Community Engagement or designee to approve and execute grant funding agreements under the Community Helping Our Indispensable Children Excel Choice mini grant program in amounts not to exceed $5,000 per program each fiscal year. 11.3, resolution, First Amendment to Professional Services Agreement with Creative Thinking Incorporated, DBA, the Idea Cooperative for Destination Marketing Services. 11.4, resolution, approval of Second Amendment to Professional Services Agreement with F001596 with Municipal Source Group, LLC. Item 11.5, resolution, assessment lien against the real property located at 446 Mallard Drive. 11.6, resolution, extension of proclamation of existence of local emergency due to fires. 11.7, resolution, extension of proclamation of local homeless emergency. 11.8, ordinance adoption, second reading, ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Rosa increasing the, I can't read that one. We need to do a couple things separately. That was an automatic pilot.
You want to, okay.
So we'll need to do that, and then I'll ask somebody to come down and do the next items.
We'll do 11.1 through 11.7. Council, any questions on 11.1 through 11.7? Yes, Mr. Schwedhelm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull item 11.4.
All right.
Yeah, Margie. Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. My question is, so this firm was hired to do the evaluation of the HR. I recognize now that it looks like the extension is for basically for the department head role, to continue what had been started with the analysis. In the staff report, the fiscal impact says that approval of this expenditure does not have a fiscal impact, and I'm not quite sure how $70,700 doesn't have an impact on that budget.
Because currently the director position is open, there's no salary being drawn against the director position.
So I guess my concern is that it's basically $35,000 a month for a person who's going to work 35 hours a week, and on the item 11.8, or 11.9, a complex job of our city manager, is at the compensation of about $20,000 a month. And I just don't, I think there's a better, I'm concerned paying that much for a person who's replacing.
So we're starting to drift into some HR issues, which I'm happy to talk offline about, but there is a challenge within the department, and I'm not at liberty to get into the human resources
I would have liked to have
issues.
this conversation in closed session, so just for the amount of this, I can't see that $35,000 a month for someone who's going to provide 35 hours in the current contract. I can't support that.
Okay, we'll pull that and vote separately on that. Any other questions on 11.1 through 11.7 minus 11.4? Do we have any cards, Ms. Gomez? Mr. Rogers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will move items 11.1 through 11.3 and 11.5 through 11.6 and waive further reading of the text.
That should be 11.7.
Excuse me, 11.7 and waive further reading of the text.
Second. Your votes? That passes with 6 ayes. And do you want to move 11.4?
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, I do want to clarify on 11.4, that position is not an acting HR director. He is simply providing services to the department. I just want to clarify that for the record.
Thank you.
I will move item 11.4 and waive further reading of the text.
Second. Your votes? And that passes 5-1 with Councilmember Schwedhelm opposed.
And now as the city manager and city attorney run away, I will move items 11.8 and 11.9.
I think I need to read them.
Before you do, I think the deputy city manager needs to.
I'll read them into the record. And this is a second reading for both items. So ordinance adoption, second reading, ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Rosa increasing compensation of the city manager by providing effective July 8th, number 1, a 3% cost of living salary adjustment, and number 2, an increase to contribution by the city for the 2018-19 fiscal year equal to 0.25% of base wage to the city manager's retiree health savings plan for a total contribution of 0.5% of base wage. And 11.9, council adoption, second reading, ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Rosa increasing the compensation of the city attorney by providing effective July 8th, 2018, 1, a 3% cost of living salary adjustment, and 2, a contribution by the city council equal to 0.5% of base wage to the city attorney's retiree health savings plan.
Thank you, Ms. Hurtado.
All right,
Mr. Rogers.
Now I will move items 11.8 and 11.9 and waive further reading of the text.
Second. Your votes? And those pass with 6 ayes. Thank you. It being well before 5 o'clock, we will move on to item 13.1.
13.1 is a report item, replacement of Fire Station 5 at Newgate Court and further evaluation of location for reconstruction. We have Jason Jenkins, Battalion Chief, presenting, and Chief Tony Gosner.
Mayor and council members, my name is Tony Gosner. I'm the fire chief of the city of Santa Rosa. Jason Jenkins is one of our battalion chiefs. He's going to be leading this presentation. I just want to start off by saying, due to the circumstance we find ourselves living through the Tubbs fire and losing one of our fire stations as well as one of our backup fire stations, we're really just taking this time to look at our options to make sure it is the right thing to do for the city moving forward. So this presentation is going to speak to that, as the staff report does. and we'll be here to answer any questions at the end. With that, I'll turn it over to Battalion Chief Jason Jenkins.
Good evening, Council.
Jake, make sure you speak close to the microphone. We've got fans going behind us, so there's some extra noise here.
Gotcha. Okay, beginning in 2017, we're all familiar with the historic firestorm. What we know is the tub fire destroyed Santa Rosa Fire Station 5 on Newgate Court. In an effort to restore emergency fire services to the Fountain Grove area, an evaluation shall be conducted to determine if the fire station should be reconstructed at Newgate Court or if the fire station should be relocated to lower Fountain Grove Parkway area. Staff would like to evaluate the location, size, and community needs as part of the rebuild process. Fire Station 5 at Newgate Court was built based on the 2002 Standards of Coverage Plan. And in 2006, approximately, the city began the process of building Newgate location. An opportunity exists now to evaluate the appropriate size, design, and location of a newly constructed fire station that shall meet the needs of the community for the next 50 to 80 years and will help best protect the area, what we know as the wildland-urban interface. Staff would like to evaluate whether the station should be constructed at Newgate location or moved to an area on lower Fountain Grove Parkway. As we look at this process, we utilize the Standards of Coverage and Deployment Plan that was completed in 2016. This plan looks at the distribution and concentration of fixed and mobile resources and considers the following: future development in the area of Fountain Grove, population density, response unit workload, the effective fire force, response to high-frequency facilities, cardiac arrest and medical incidents, geographic and weather-related risks, two in, two out, and response times and mapping. Proposed, identify fire station location options and design needs for a fire station that will enhance emergency services to the Fountain Grove area. A strategically located and designed fire station accomplishes expedient response times to meet population and response forecast, enhance emergency coverage in a high fire severity zone. Some of the relocation benefits include staff and house an additional engine during critical events, severe weather times, operate a forward incident command post during critical incidents, store reserve fire apparatus, host community meetings, and assist in meeting response time goals to a larger population. What I'd like to do now is go over briefly the anatomy of an emergency 911 call. And I don't know if this slide, you may not have this slide in your presentation, and I apologize for that. But essentially, when 911 is called in our city, the 911 call pressing time per NFPA standards is approximately 1 minute, and that call is processed in a dispatch center. Once we're notified, we have 1 minute of turnout time to respond. Once we respond, our drive time goal is approximately 4 minutes, and our turnout time plus drive time equals that response time. In Santa Rosa, the performance goal for response time is to have a unit arrive on scene of emergency incidents within 5 minutes, 90% of the time. The following maps will reflect our Santa Rosa response times. So this map here that you're looking at is Newgate Court. The area that we really want to focus on here, this shows District 5 up at Newgate Court, and at the top of the Fountain Grove Parkway, you can see the number 5 on the map. With that, the lower Fountain Grove Parkway is kind of where it lists Newgate in bold, where Highway 101 appears. The area that we're suggesting moving the fire station to the lower Fountain Grove Parkway would be in the area between where Parker Hill Road meets the Parkway, where Sweet Teas was, to the lower Alturia area. On this map, that area is yellow, which shows the drive time of 3 to 5 minutes, and that's an area that has a lot of future development proposed and mixed use zoning. This map indicates a move of location of identified where now the 5 is in that lower Fountain Grove area. And you can see that area that was previously 3 to 5 minutes becomes an under 3-minute response time. It does change the backside of Fountain Grove Parkway to a 3 to 5 minute, but that area is very, very low call volume, and so in this move, it would pick up that much needed area where the call volume is much higher in the lower Fountain Grove Parkway area. And this map is the Newgate location, and when you look at that map where it kind of works down the backside of the Fountain Grove Parkway east, that area is green to where it ties into Shenate Road. That's the area that would be affected. That I mentioned before is low call volume, and then the area towards Highway 101 where that higher density future infills is scheduled to occur is the area we're going to try to enhance the services to. So this map is, again, just a zoomed in increase of coverage to that lower Fountain Grove area. In doing so, if we make a move where we relocate Station 5, there are some impacts to the larger part of the system that affects the Rankin Valley Fire District 6 area. This map shows Fire Station 6, which is on Calistoga Road, and as you work your way west, this coloring model just shows Engine 6, but the coverage area to the back part of Fountain Grove Parkway is about that max response. This map, though, is busy, so bear with me a bit. This shows the entire city, but what it's showing is if we added a fire station to the lower Fountain Grove, we enhance that area where that high call volume is. And this is looking long range, way into the future, but in an effort to reinforce that wildland urban interface to really effectively put a strong force of fire engines along that eastern border of the city. This shows adding a fire engine in the area of Mission and relocating Station 6 out to Los Alamos. That area near Mission, where Oliver's Market is about that max response area. When you look at some of the maps, there's a void that really long-term should be addressed. But if we're gonna build a fire station, rebuild Fire Station 5, it would be best to look at the total system and how it really affects our ability to provide protection for the entire city. And in doing so, long-term, we would need to add a station in the Mission and relocate Engine 6 to the Los Alamos area. And that also it aligns with some of the future development which is going to be occurring out between Calistoga Road and the Oakmont area. And this map here is the same as a previous map, but the one little change we have here is it relocates Engine 6 from out by Los Alamos to Middle Rankin Road. And the only reason why we put this in here is it may be an option as we look at this into the future. It does help enhance some of the response times into that backside of the Fountain Grove area. And this is a location where currently the Rankin Valley Fire District has a station that is unstaffed by volunteers. So this map here is a 7-minute response with an effective fire force. What we do when we respond to a structure fire, we respond with 3 engines, a truck, and a battalion chief. And the goal is to provide 14 firefighters on scene and within 7-minute response. And so this is what we call our effective fire force. So we are recommending that the fire department, with council approval, direct us to evaluate the fire station location that'll best serve the Fountain Grove area in the city's east side entirely as we move forward and we identify a spot or we rebuild at the Newgate location. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you. Council, are there questions? Can you explain, I know that as you evaluate this, you'll be using these types of maps to make a decision, but what other information goes into it? Is it just response time?
It is not just response time. We look at population density, we look at call volume, we look at trends, we look at what is going to be built in the lower Fountain Grove area versus the Highway 12 corridor. So we look at a little bit of everything, and there's a little bit of, you know, you're trying to make the best decision on the best information that you have. So there's a lot more to it than just these maps, but I will tell you that we created these maps with our GIS shop here at Santa Rosa. So we have the ability to move stations where we need to based on calls for service and population density. And with proposed developments, we can see pretty much where the calls are going to be for the most part, right? So most calls happen at the population densities, and so we're able to take a look at that. But essentially, with the standards of cover, like I said earlier, we're here because, you know, circumstance and timing. Our standards of cover was completed in 2016. Station 5 was built in 2015, and it was started back in 2006. So there's a long process that was developed. It was, you know, we were noticed as a city in 2002. We needed to make some of these changes, and it takes time to react to all that. So because of the circumstance we find ourselves, we just feel it's important to take a look at these stations right now, and if we need to move Station 5, it will be a bigger station to meet the needs of the city and the department, and put it in a better location to help the service, the calls for service downtown. Back in 2006, I think we're right around 20,000 calls for service. This year we're up around 2,700. We're going to be close to 2,800 or more in 2018. So our calls for service are climbing, and we need to make sure that when we build out our stations, we build out with all of that in mind, which means we're going to have to move Station 6 at some point and add another station in between. We're just talking about the east side now, but we have southwest issues that we got to work towards as well. But these stations are going to be here for 50 to 80 years, and so we're trying to make sure they're in the best spot possible.
Okay, and how does this decision affect the general plan update that's coming up, or vice versa? How does that affect your locating of stations in the future?
We have the ability to have input with the general plan, so all that's part of it. We were back here a couple months ago for Station 8, and that was a general plan amendment just so we can look at property. So we're working with planning moving forward. So it won't have any impact. We'll just have updates as we go.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Schwedhelm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for that presentation. I am supportive of this as an opportunity to take a look at things a different way. I would also ask, I made this request before, on your standards of coverage and employment plan in 2016 on page 55, they talk about the number of calls, how you have them throughout the day. And there's a curve, a bell curve. It's my understanding of the staffing model, rather than just looking at the geographic location of the stations, I would encourage you to look at a staffing model so you can see, because my understanding is there's pretty much static staffing 24 hours, but as the response plan shows, your calls for service, as you're saying, are increasing, and they go greater from, as it says, activities at its highest between 9 and 8, but my understanding is staffing is pretty much level throughout the day.
Staffing is level for the most part. We will upstaff during severe weather events or with special events throughout the city, but we need all those the stations static for effective fire force. When we get into those peak times of calls, we need to add equipment. So we need to add squads, things of like that to help with the call volume. So we're not quite there yet because that's people and additional money. So if we get our stations strategically located as best as possible, then we can start adding different types of response to it.
Well, my question would be, where would we find a staffing methodology analysis versus just a geographical analysis of the deployment of resources throughout the city? Just to see, would it be more cost effective? Or what would it take to generate a staffing analysis versus just a geographical location analysis?
Well, it's typically done, I would say it's typically done based upon call volume and unit workload. And so, like for engine 11, it's at 4,300 calls a year, and engine 1 is almost 5,000 calls annually. So they're at their peak recommended workload. Now, a lot of that workload is definitely higher during the daytime. But so you're asking like a staffing analysis that would show what if we added a squad during the day, or how would we share that workload in that area versus is it needed at night?
There's a plethora of different options. I'm not going to suggest to anyone, but you're working 24-hour shifts or 48-hour shifts. There's other staffing models, 4-8, 4 10-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts. There's a variety of other staffing models that analysis would show that would mirror what's on figure 33 on page 55, those call for service. Is there a more efficient way so we can maybe attempt to make the response time 90% within 5 minutes that we haven't achieved in a few years? I get that this is one methodology, moving the stations. I guess I would just be interested in seeing information to show what a staffing methodology help us with our response times, and I've yet to be able to locate that type of a document.
Yeah, what we could do is we could put together a document that will show increased staffing during peak times. If we do peak staffing, throughout the city, we'd have to add a couple of squads during those, which will give our response times down and keep our effective fire force. That's adding equipment. If we do different shifts, it's adding people. It simply is just adding more people because you have to have more people to continue those types of shifts. But we can take a look at that. It would be more costly. So the hours we work right now are the most efficient in terms of money, but that doesn't mean we have the amount of people that we should have.
Because again, it'd be helpful for me on that analysis. If we're stating, as a general plan states, we'll get to 90% of the calls within 5 minutes, emergency calls. If we're not reaching that, what are some other options? You're right, and maybe with outside of our financial ability to get there, but actually seeing the data saying, if you want this, this is what it would cost and this is what it would take. And maybe changing the methodology. Again, going back to what you guys are talking about, this opportunity, it's an opportunity now if we're going to be looking at the stations, why not also look at staffing? That's what I'm suggesting.
We're also looking at different methods of delivering training to keep stations in service more so they're not going to the tower all the time, right? So that we're looking at all kinds of things, quite frankly, because our response times they're not getting better, they're getting worse because we're just a busier system. So we're looking at all of those, but we can absolutely take a look at different staffing models and what that would cost to achieve.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, council? Any cards on this, Ms. Gomez? All right. Mr. Sawyer, you have this item.
So I don't have it's not really a motion, accept the recommendation of the fire department to approve staff to evaluate fire station location options that would best serve the Fountain Grove area.
We'll take a look at that.
Second.
And your votes? Six ayes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I got some ideas on that.
So we are 2 minutes before 5. We'll take a 2-minute break. Don't go anymore.
In the middle?
Oh, yeah, I'll just introduce you.
We'll make this available. So all you need to do is use your arrows to the right. I'll take you to the next slide.
Here and here.
Yes.
Okay. End and home.
Yes.
Thank you for your patience. And I know you're ready to go with the public hearing, but we're going to do public comment on non-agenda matters first. So we'll start with Ann Seeley, followed by Alex Crone.
Hello, Mayor Corsi and City Council members. Councilmember Olivares, I want to thank you for proposing the letter that the council has on its agenda later on in the meeting to President Trump, expressing the Santa Rosa Council's opposition to the tragic separation of children from their parents at our southern border. I'm acknowledging you here because unless a citizen looks at the City Council's website agenda of this meeting, you wouldn't know that the council was taking this up, and I think it's the right thing to do, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Seeley. Alex Crone, followed by Adrian Lobby. One sec. There you go.
Thank you. Again, I'm here today to talk about the small cell towers. I'm not sure where things stand. I see all over town, and they're in the PG&E polls pretty much everywhere you go now if you know where to look. Look, wireless technology is incredible. I mean, it allows us to do so many things. But do we really ask the critical question of what is it? You know, how is this working? Microwave radiation is what it is. Right now we're in G4 technology, which is 800 megahertz to 5 gigahertz. That's 800 million waves per second to 5 billion waves per second. We can't see it, we can't hear it. This here is an Acousticom 2. I got it off Amazon for $200. I believe everyone should have one. But this gives you a sound. Right, so this is just background radiation here. If I'm gonna go Google something off my phone, right, this gives you an idea kind of what you're being exposed to. It'd be interesting to see what you guys are sitting in front of with your iPads and all of us with our Wi-Fi's and smart gas meters and smart electric meters and smart TVs, and you know, the world we live in is becoming more and more engulfed in this microwave radiation. G5, by the way, since this spectrum of 800 megahertz to 5 gigahertz is filling up, we're going to a higher frequency, 24 to 90 gigahertz. That's 24 to 90 billion waves per second that G5 is gonna be. Those waves are a lot higher frequency and carry more energy, but they don't travel as far. So that's why we need these small cells all over the place. So I just encourage you guys as boyfriends and fathers and, you know, family members. I mean, we had people from our community. We had doctors and lawyers. We had the guy's family who gave us Anadale come and say, hey, we don't want these small cells in front of our homes. The city attorney sits up there. You guys said, well, you know, Verizon, we can't really do anything. It's against the law to even talk about the health effects when there are thousands and thousands of studies showing that these microwaves have a clear biological effect? I mean, that's clear, guys. Let's think about things logically. Big conspiracy theory here. Verizon, AT&T, Comcast, they own NBC, they own CNN, they own Fox, they own the mainstream media. So we're really not hearing a lot about this, but let's think critically about our world we live in today and where we're going with all this technology and who has a say. Whose decision is it? You guys have an opportunity to have some courage and maybe stand up to Verizon and represent the people of Santa Rosa here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Adrian Lobby, followed by Thomas Ells.
So my name's Adrian Lobby. I'm with Homeless Action. I want to say again how alienating it feels to be so far away from you all. I really like to be down where I can see people's expression and have a sense that we're all humans on the same level. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about the evolving issues that are happening in the streets around Corporate Center Parkway. There are a lot of RVs who have found shelter there and are parked there. We counted about 50 of them. There's about 30 additional vehicles that are strong enough to pull large vehicles around. There's another 40 cars that are potentially places where people are sleeping in. So this is now a sizable community of people who are homeless, according to the federal definition. And it's come to our attention that the city's HEAP project is looking at this encampment and evaluating it for vulnerability and all the things that they look at. I think this is a perfect place for the city council to provide a situation where people who are already sheltered can stay sheltered. We know there is no other place for these folks to go. The average rent, if you can find a spot, and last I heard there was no spot within 45-mile radius. The average one costs $600 a month, which is a hefty fee for people who have fixed incomes. And your vehicle has to be less than 10 years old. So while some of these vehicles are very nice, very fancy, middle class, upper middle class vehicles, some of them are not. And yet people are living in them and living in them successfully. So I think it would really behoove the city to make these streets a safe zone for safe parking at the very least, and provide some facilities out there so people are not, have a place to dump their waste and maybe get some potable water. And I would also ask that you would ask your staff for a report on the HEAP program. From our point of view, it is a massive failure. You were promised that people would be given services and would end up in housing. I think the numbers of people who've actually been in housing are probably in the single digit, possibly double digit. In the meantime, you have moved, I don't know, between 200 and 300 people away from their communities and the places that they felt somewhat safe. So I would call that a huge failure, but I would be interested to hear what your staff has to say about it. And I think it's really time to evaluate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Ells, followed by Victoria Yanez.
So this is from The Power of Myth, Joseph Campbell's book, and he quotes Chief Seattle from 1852, writing to the President of the United States. The President in Washington sends word that he wishes to buy our land. But how can you buy or sell the sky and the land? The idea is strange to us. If we do not own the freshness of the air and the sparkle of the water, how can you buy them? Every part of this earth is sacred to my people, every shining pine needle, every sandy shore. We know the sap which courses through the trees, as we know the blood of that courses through our veins. The shining water that moves the streams and the rivers is not just water, but the blood of our ancestors. If we sell you our land, you must remember that it is sacred. And what I'm talking about is the same thing I have been talking about unity and making your enemy your friend. I know many people in the area of Seattle. And Chief Seattle eventually gave up most of their land in order to keep peace. The rivers are our brothers. They quench our thirst. They carry our canoes. If we sell you our land, remember that the air is precious to us, that the air shares its spirit with all the life it supports. Will you teach your children what we have taught our children, that the earth is our mother? What befalls the earth befalls all the sons of the earth. This we know, the earth does not belong to man, man belongs to the earth. One thing we know, our God is also your God. The earth is precious to him, and to harm the earth is to heap contempt on its creator. Your destiny is a mystery to us, our destiny. Here we are 166 years later. What will happen when the buffalo are all slaughtered, the wild horses tamed? What will happen when the secret corners of the forest are heavy with the scent of many men, and the view of the ripe hills is blotted by talking wires? When the last red man is vanished with his wilderness, and his memory is only the shadow of a cloud moving over across the prairie, will these shores and forests still be here? Will there be any of the spirit of my people left? We love this earth as a newborn loves its mother's heartbeat. So if we sell you our land, love it as we have loved it. Care for it as we have cared for it. Hold in your mind the memory of the land as it is when you receive it. Preserve the land for all children and love it as God loves us all. And I just have a few seconds left. I would just like to share that this is about how he turned enemies into friends. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ells. Victoria Yanez, followed by Gina Hunsinger.
Victoria Yanez, Homeless Action, exclamation point. I know you all have missed me very much, but I have been busy defending the infractions that y'all laid on the homeless during the sweeps of the people sleeping on the streets. And some who just accidentally had been there. I'm happy to report that we did get an acquittal of somebody who actually had a tent on the sidewalk. So that was not an obstruction of the sidewalk. Anyway, I'm here because I'm taking this opportunity in celebration of the big anniversary of the 14th Amendment, which just passed, especially the Due Process Clause, because I was informed that you're either going to approve a new contract with Catholic Charities or you've already done it. It doesn't matter because this issue needs to be addressed anyway. And that's the due process that is lacking. Whenever anybody has a complaint against Catholic Charities, their grievance process is basically dysfunctional. And it's also, the concept is laid out in a very top-heavy manner without fairness to the individual complaining that they didn't get housing assistance that they were promised during the whole time that they were at Sam Jones, and then they get exited from Sam Jones without any notice or backup or shelter. I'm talking about an 83-year-old man. Anyway, I have had other problems with Catholic Charities because Catholic Charities is performing a public function with public funds. Yet, where are the open meetings there? If there are open meetings now, I would like to know about it. Because as far as I know, it's very hard to get information from Catholic Charities. Also, I have filed grievances against against different programs on behalf of people in the programs, and we do not get a response from Jenny Lynn Holmes. she just ignores and doesn't return phone calls, or maybe she's just doing it to me. I don't know. Anyway, so, but this is what I hear.
Thank you, Ms. Yanis.
Also,
Thank
they
you.
should call the...
Gina Hunsinger, please.
When they're closing down their state farming program.
Thank you.
If she would notice, just like anybody else, following the process of law. Thank you.
Ms. Hunsinger. Ms. Yanis, please. Ms. Hunsinger.
Good afternoon, Mayor Corsi and City Council members. My name is Gina Hunsinger, and I'm the General Manager of Snoopy's Home Ice, and it's actually cold there right now. We're having a huge hockey tournament right now. We have 1,100 hockey players from all over the world, 14 teams from Canada, and New Jersey, Fresno, Boston, British Columbia. We have 106 games that are playing from 6:30 in the morning till midnight. And I'm actually here just to come and thank you because the City of Santa Rosa gave us some funds this year from the Santa Rosa Tourism Business Improvement Area, and we are very appreciative of that. It's money well spent. Sonoma County Tourism estimates that $3.3 million comes into this area from those hockey players. It's not a one-day event. It's for 10 days, and players come. They play 3 games. They're 75 minutes, and then they're done, and they're hanging out with their 17 buddies that are on the team, and they're going all over the city and the county, spending money in this area, which is great. So I just wanted to say, I gave Julie this, but there's a tournament here. It's got a schedule in it. There's games are free. People can come and enjoy it, and I don't know if it's legal, but we gave you a free root beer because Snoopy loves root beer. So you can come down and check it out. I know that Chris Rogers and Jack Tibbetts are coming tomorrow night to our barbecue, so we'll see you there. And one last thing is the oldest Guinness Book record holder as the oldest hockey player in the world is playing tomorrow at 11. His name's Mark Surdich, and he's 96, and he'll be 97 in next week. So thank you, and if you want to see some vibrant, happy people, and it's cold, come on down. Everyone's welcome. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Hunsinger.
Sure.
Best free entertainment in town. Paul McGavin.
Is this on? Yes, it is. Just point of order. I sent a video link to the city clerk and to all the city council members. Will you be able to trigger that video for me? So we can make that as part of my public comment?
No.
No? Okay.
Make your comment, please.
Yes, I will. I'm going to play that video from up here. So Mr. Camera, please come in, because I'm going to put the microphone right here. We're going to hear from, this is the Verizon CEO telling you the truth about what's going on.
Please use the microphone, sir.
Every part of foliage, every storm that went through.
Doing the best I can.
Busted the myth that it has to be line of sight. It does not. We busted the myth foliage will shut it down. I mean, there was back in the days when a pine needle would stop it. That does not happen. And these things, in the 200 feet from a home, we're now designing the network for over 2,000 feet from transmitter to receiver, which
it's really high frequency, so everybody thinks it doesn't go very far, but it's a really big pipe, and so that's what allows you to gain the super fast speeds.
I'll tell you about what it says in a second. He's showing you that this 5G stuff works over 3,000 feet.
On top of this parking garage, we're 3,000 feet away from our radio node. The cool thing about this is we did not move the radio node. It's pointing down to serve the customers in that area. But here, even 3,000 feet away, we're still getting gig speeds.
All right, so why you actually treat us this way is unbelievable. We used to have rights to be down there and to actually project anything that we needed to so you guys could get good information. I've had the questions in front of the city council for over 5 weeks, no response whatsoever. What is the justification for forcing us back here at the back of the room, not being able to use the same kinds of presentation methods that your city staff and invited guests can use? That would be wrong. And so we're asking you to actually put it back the way it was on March 6th. What you couldn't hear was the Verizon's CEO admitted that 5G will go out 3,000 feet. There is no need to have any of these so-called small cell cell phone towers on the light poles and utility poles right in front of people's homes. The least intrusive means to improve their coverage is to collate onto macro towers, just as you see in that video. And because we've put that out to you guys and we're putting it into the public record, we're making you aware of the lies that Verizon presented on February 14th, 2017 to mislead the City Council, and presented again on June 5th, 2018 to continue to mislead the City Council. The answer is that the Verizon CEO and the field engineer have demonstrated it's a bunch of lies. And you shouldn't be listening to them. You should listen to the readings that we make and report to you. Thank you.
That's all the cards I have. We'll move on to our public hearing, item 14.1. Ms. Hurtado.
Item 14.1, public hearing, adoption of revised animal services fees. As you know, we receive animal services through an MOU with Sonoma County.
Would you please just speak as close to that as you can? We've got the fans going on behind us. It's a little hard to hear.
Okay. So our animal services are provided through an MOU with Sonoma County. John Skill is here. He's the Animal Services Director, and he's been here 3 years and has done an outstanding job. We've seen real improvement in the quality of the services, expansion of services, and I want to also make note of what a great partner they've been when we have had our cooling stations. They have provided a facility at, I guess, like an RV at Finley, so that the animals can also partake of cooling services during those very hot days, like maybe today too. So I want to turn it over to Mr. Skill, who's going to talk about the proposed service fee increases.
Thank you, Gloria, for that kind introduction. I appreciate it. Before I begin, I also want to just thank the council for putting me on at 5 o'clock. Usually I'm the very last item on the agenda, and while the council meeting is very interesting, it'll be great to be number one, so thank you. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for your consideration of the proposed fee proposal for animal services. The fee increase proposal before you this evening is to help animal services recover more costs associated with providing services and to maintain the quality of services. As with my previous presentations, I'll be providing a very brief overview of animal services as they relate to the current agreement, and pending adoption of these fees, they would go into effect as of July 11th of this year. I also just wanted to point out before I go to the next slide that the photograph on this slide, if you've not been to animal services recently, these are our new welcome signs. They were installed last year, just so people can identify exactly where we are amongst a bunch of gray buildings and to make it a little bit more welcoming. Okay. So very brief background. So before I go there, I couldn't give this presentation without some mention of the firestorm that affected our entire community last October. Of course, it was devastating and heartbreaking for the entire community. And I'd really just like to take this time to acknowledge and thank the City Council, staff, residents, and the entire community for the tremendous support given to animal services during a time that tested us all. A critical aspect of our mission is the protection, health, safety of people and animals, of which I'm really proud of my staff who demonstrated extreme professionalism, resiliency, compassion under the most difficult and challenging of circumstances. Just very briefly, as far as improvements that Gloria alluded to, so over the past several years, Animal Services has focused very strategically on improvements and enhancements that are helping to change shelter perception, image, techniques, systems, and strategies to help us improve positive outcomes for all the animals that come through the shelter. Despite the many challenges that we all face, we continue to make improvements to the facility and operations. We've diversified and built on a successful volunteer program. We've added new donation funds that are very specific to a variety of animal needs, including large animal rescue, which was very useful during the fires of October. Our volunteers also recently raised over $90,000 for the Field of Dreams project, which has paid for the improved play yards for dogs at the shelter, and that is partly you can see in this image here. We used to have rocks and stones, now we have dog-friendly mulch. It's all of these types of efforts and more that help to ensure that the animals at the shelter have the best chance of being adopted, returned to their owner, or fostered. And you can see that in the data. Couldn't do the presentation without mentioning licenses, and although we're not asking for any license increases, the slide focuses on the importance, though, of license compliance, which, as of the end of 2017, was at 41.7%, or an increase of 6.4% on the estimated number of dogs in Santa Rosa. That was over from 2016. License compliance is and always has been a major part of our strategic planning goals, as license revenue is critical as a critical funding revenue source that partially helps to support staffing and operations of the shelter. Responsible dog owners who license their dogs not only help to support operations at the shelter, they also help keep our county packs safe as they're vaccinated against rabies, have a microchip to ensure that if they're lost, they can quickly be returned to their owners, oftentimes without even having to come into the shelter. This frees up space at the shelter for unwanted, abused, neglected animals and allows our staff more time to work on the more difficult cases. I also wanted to point out for residents who didn't know that in order to purchase a license or renew a license, you can either come into the shelter, you can do it via mail, or you can go online, whichever's most convenient for you. Almost done. So the fee adoption schedule before you this evening is being implemented to cover a very modest amount of the actual cost of impound and boarding fees, along with kennel and pet shop licenses, and a couple of other miscellaneous fees. These fees are expected to generate an additional estimated $5,454. That's countywide, not just for the city of Santa Rosa. Impact on Santa Rosa residents is estimated to be between $1,363 and $2,727, or 25 to 50% of this total. So it's not the entire $5,454. This last slide, I would like to conclude the presentation by obviously requesting that you approve and adopt the fee increase, but also to once again thank you and this community for the tremendous outpouring of support, both financial and in kind, during the October firestorm for the rescue, treatment, and care of animals. We could not have been as successful as we were without everyone's help. And in fact, this photograph is a picture, both sides, of a brand new ASPCA grant-funded emergency response trailer that we received and is now ready for service. And unfortunately, it will get used, but now we have it, it will hopefully be of great use to the community. And that really concludes my presentation. I simply request of the council that you approve and adopt the fee schedule, and if you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to try and answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Skeel. Questions, council? Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just as a matter of curiosity, I noticed that in your fee schedule, the percentage that licensed animals, particularly dogs, went up by a higher percentage of unlicensed when there's an impound. Is there any particular reason why that wasn't consistent across the board?
Thank you for the question. The idea was to try and have an average to base it upon the cost of living increases. And so, let's look at that fee. Which fee specifically was that one?
Yeah, let me...
we got a lot on here.
Yeah, in Exhibit A, in the impound fees, I was just curious because it seems like we've had an arbitrary distinction between what the cost is going to be for an unlicensed and a licensed, and obviously the intent is to try to push people into licensing their animals. So I was just curious why the percentage that the unlicensed went up was by a much smaller figure than the percentage that the licensed went up. Still understanding that there's a gap between the two, but...
Sure. I think we've come to realize that we don't want to increase too much more the unlicensed, but it is something we are looking at. And in fact, I'm hoping that this year we'll be able to get an actual fee study done on all of these fees and costs and be able to come back to the Board of Supervisors and the City Council to better answer those questions as to why these fees are the way they are, and to answer questions such as why is this one higher or this one lower. But that's the best I can give you right now, but I can come back and get you better answers if you like.
Well, no, I think that we're always always interested in seeing that nexus. Next year, I'm not going to ask you to do additional work for the extra $5,000 we're talking about here. I was just curious if there was a methodology or a policy argument that you were making.
No, I honestly, we have analysts who take a look at all of our fees and make recommendations to the CAO's office based on a number of different factors, and I can't give you the exact math that was arrived at to come up with those recommendations.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, council? Do we have any cards on this, Ms. Gomez? Mr. Oliveris, you have this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Move a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Rosa approving and adopting the Sonoma County Animal Services revised fees and waive further reading of the text.
Second. And your votes? That passes with 6 ayes. Thanks very much, Mr. Skeel.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Moving on, I think we're at 13.2.
Item 13.2, report Renewal Enterprise District read. This item was continued from the June 26th regular meeting, and directors David Guin and David Gwine presenting.
All right, thank you. My name is David Guin. I'm the Director of Planning and Economic Development. And I'm here with a team, both the city and county team, and shortly Suzanne Smith from the Sonoma County Transportation Authority Regional Climate Protection Agency. She will be joining us as well. So with me today is David Gwine. He's the Director of Housing and Community Services. You'll be speaking here in a second. Margaret Van Vliet, who's the Executive Director of the Sonoma County Sonoma County Community Development Commission, and Corey O'Donnell, who was with County Council. This was a joint effort to pull this together, and I want to thank Margaret and her team for helping to pull this presentation together. This presentation was developed and presented to the County Board of Supervisors, a version of this, about 3 weeks ago, I believe, and we're here tonight to give it to you, the City Council. In addition to the city team, Sue Gallagher and Raisa De La Rosa, Economic Development Manager, on the team on the city side helping to pull this together. So we're all here to answer questions at the end once we get started. So to start off, I'm going to turn it over to Dave Gwine to give a little background on why we're here, what we're trying to achieve, and the hurdle that we're trying to get over.
Thanks, David. So last November, the City Council formed a build-rebuild joint ad hoc, as you know. This accumulated in an idea called Renewal Enterprise District, which we'll be presenting today. But first, we went through a few slides that show the need that existed even before the disaster. The deficit of 2.5 million homes statewide would mean that statewide there'd have to be building of around 80,000 homes per year. California added 544,000 households, but only 467 net housing units. The state has between a $50 billion and $60 billion annual housing affordability gap, and a real sensational statistic is we rank 49th amongst the states for housing units per capita. So here's a graph that demonstrates the housing need for Santa Rosa, just Santa Rosa, the actual units built from 2012 to 2017. And then if you add our regional housing needs assessment, RENA numbers, plus the units destroyed in the fire, you can see that we're up over 1,800 units annually by per year for the year 2020. And to give you an example of a breakdown of the RENA numbers, very low of that gray bar is 1,000 units. Low, which is 80% of median, is 640 units. And to get some context to that, a family of 4 that's considered low income in Santa Rosa make $78,550 annually.
Dave, could you repeat that? The AMI figure?
Okay, so a family of 4 at 80% of median, which is considered low, makes $78,550. And many of you might have seen in the paper recently in San Francisco, that same household size is considered low income at $117,000. Very unique for California. Again, some more statistics regarding the need to look at new resources. Federal and state funding have been reduced. Sonoma County lost over $41 million annually since 2008, which is primarily the source of redevelopment. The median rent has increased by 16%, while income has decreased by 6%. A fact that the renters must earn 4 times the state minimum wage to afford a median rent right now. The lowest income renters spend over half, 68% of their income on rent, and the cost of housing alone raises Sonoma County poverty rate up to almost 18%. And a fact about health, the least you can spend on your housing costs, the more you can invest in healthy foods and health care. And then the next slide refers to that in economic development terms, for employers to attract the right employment workforce for this area. Half the state's households are unable to afford the cost of housing in their local market. So turn it back over to David to go through some of the tools we've been using to close the gap.
So one of the things you hear fairly often are toolboxes and tools to achieve this issue or address this issue. This is something you've heard in our housing action plan. The county also has a toolbox that they've been working with. This is an example from McKinsey's Global Institute, a toolkit California-wide on how they're going to close that gap. But there's some similarities there in terms of what we're trying to achieve and how we're trying to achieve that goal. Obviously, identifying the housing hotspots, what land's available, where can we develop, where should we be developing, looking for areas where we can remove barriers to generate housing, ensure we have equal housing access to housing once it's built, and then unlocking the supply by cutting cost and risk of producing the housing. So identifying funding, identifying ways to bring revenue and to the table to help get the type of housing that we are looking for. And so that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about here in the next couple of slides. So this is a good example of a toolbox. So it's a good example of what we've been doing as a city and as the region, and we're hoping to take that to the next level with what we're proposing here tonight. So what we are proposing is a renewal enterprise district that we've been working on together, the city and the county, Sonoma Clean Power, SCTA, to look at how we can work as a region to solve this together. So we can't solve this individually, each individual city, the county on its own. We're working together, pooling our resources and addressing this issue the way it should be. So the goal here is to create a model, a replicable model that meets the needs of the 21st century. And these are the elements that we came up with in terms of regionalizing our housing production, as I mentioned, working together, pooling and leveraging financing and funding, sharing risks and benefits of developing new ways, streamlining environmental review and providing confidence in the projects that are doing good things and providing the housing that we're looking for, and putting equity, affordability, and climate solutions at the center of our local economic strategy. And so that is important. So when we start talking about a regional approach and putting money on the table, making sure that we're achieving the goals that both the city and county have been looking forward to seeing in projects. And this is another way to look at that, essentially what it's going to take, all these elements that go into that climate climate smart, transit-oriented development, equitable, resilient, balanced housing in our community. It's going to take planning and regulatory certainty, work that we need to work on, and agreed goals on how we achieve that. New financial mechanisms, how do we share risks? How do we use the funding that we have more regionally and in leverage to get additional funding into the region? Have a shared leadership and governance between the city and county, and potentially other cities in the future. And then draw from our existing documents that we've already put in place. So we have a lot of plans out there, documents, PDAs, specific plans, general plans that have identified where we want this housing, but we haven't realized what those plans have, what those goals were. So how do we unlock those, focus on that area, and focus our effort and achieve housing in those areas? And with that said, I want to turn it over to Susanna Smith to talk a little bit about what that housing is, the plans that I just referred to, and how we got to some of these numbers and where those are located.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. We've been, as the Transportation Authority and Regional Climate Protection Authority, our board of directors covers all of the cities and the county, and we work with the staff from all of those jurisdictions on long-range planning issues, typically around transportation and climate, but more and more how intertwined those are with housing and general plan updates. So in doing that, over the last number of months in particular, we've looked at regionally what our pipeline projects are and what housing projects are underway or in development phase. We've looked at what the rebuild needs are, and then we've also explored what general plan build out looks like in plans throughout the county. Next slide. The Renewal Enterprise District also really tried to hone in on targeted sort of planning tools or planning definitions that we've historically used, so that it was clear we're not talking about a countywide build in greenfield sort of discussion, but more tailoring it to areas that are identified in general plans or specific plans that are transit priority areas. These are state statutorily defined half-mile within transit stations, specifically in our case SMART. Employment centers such as the airport area outside of the city of Santa Rosa. Opportunity zones, which is a new federal designation that allows for certain tax benefits for new development in certain areas, including two areas in downtown Santa Rosa, and then also exploring what the opportunities are on publicly owned parcels and rural and to some degree rural investment areas, in particular the airport area just north of Santa Rosa. So the map that you see up on the wall there is an overlay of sort of all of those layers, priority development areas, transit priority areas, and then just for sort of broader understanding how those may or may not interface with the areas affected by the 2017 wildfires. The discussion, though, really has centered around build and rebuild, that they are a symbiotic discussion, and we can't just talk about rebuild. We have to talk about the housing needs overall. So, next slide. I'll take care of this one too. So this is in alignment with a lot of the work that we are doing in conjunction with the region, with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and the Association of Bay Area Governments. We work with the local jurisdictions and with the region to try and knit together the key priorities and planning needs to feed into Plan Bay Area, which Plan Bay Area 2040 was recently adopted, but given the nature of planning efforts, especially these regional measures, we are actually kicking off later this year the next round of planning associated with the region. So between that and the committee that MTC has created around housing, known as CASA, interacting with them and how the red is going to be consistent with those planning efforts. There have been discussions at the statewide level as well with state agencies such as the Office of Planning and Research and the Strategic Growth Council, who have expressed an interest in trying to work with us locally to address the economic impacts that we have faced post-fire, but also understanding the housing needs that we had pre-fire. with that, I will turn it back to David.
Great, thank you. And so what the red is and what we're proposing tonight is that we start and propose or create a JPA for a period of 2 years, and that would be between the city and county to start with. So just the city and the county would be involved in this. After 2 years, the thought would be that we could add additional jurisdictions if those jurisdictions wanted to join, but that would give us time to get it going, work it out, figure out how it's working, what issues we need to address, things we might need to modify between the city and county, and just develop this thing in a way that is effective. But that doesn't mean that we won't be not including other cities in the conversation and making them aware of what we're doing, and I think that's really important, and we've heard that from a lot of different stakeholders, making sure that everyone's involved, understands what we're doing, and is along for the process. So we would work with, the proposal would be we work with the city and county ad hocs, so both the city and the county both have build and rebuild ad hocs that meet to work on these issues. We'd work with those two ad hocs to work through some of the nuances of how this works, what the issues are, and bring that back to the full board and the full council for any actions that need to be taken in the development of that JPA. That's the proposal. In terms of staffing, we would look at using existing staffing, so it would be existing county, city, CDC, SCTA, RCPA staffing, and Sonoma Clean Power staffing to manage those JPA activities to get it up and going. So we're not proposing at this point to add any additional staffing or executive director or anything that you would typically see in a normal JPA creation. We are seeking funds to help with the startup of this. There is a lot of interest, as Suzanne mentioned. A lot of people that we've been talking to over the past few months have expressed interest in this through the Strategic Growth Council, Hewitt Foundation, and others, that hopefully we can attract some money and identify funds to help get this going so it doesn't have an adverse impact, both the general fund on the board's, this county side and the city side. The next steps for this would be for us to, if the council would like us to proceed and spend the time to develop this, is to create that JPA, what that JPA would look like, the documents, work with those two ad hocs to fine tune that, bring that JPA back to both the board and the city council along with any sort of budget that we would need to make sure that we have the sufficient resources to get going, unless we've identified money from donations or from grants. We're going to continue to track and support legislation that would support this effort, the couple that Suzanne mentioned, and then others that are out there that might be beneficial to this effort of bringing housing to these areas. And then continue to facilitate development of the projects that meet these objectives. So looking for projects and identifying ways that we can formulate criteria that would help identify what projects could benefit from this, what projects we want to support, and how to move those through a system such as what we're proposing. And basically, and deep in collaboration with the public and private partners. And so that's something that's going to be critical, is we can't do this alone. It's not going to be just the city and the county. We really need public and private partnerships through this process. And so we'll be working through that over the next few months, and working with those two ad hocs to make sure that we're on board with what our plan is, how that's going to proceed, and what that work plan would be for the 2 years as the JPA is formed. And so that's the ask tonight, and we're here to answer questions. Again, we have city and county staff along with Sonoma County Transportation Authority to help answer questions, but the direction that we'd like to receive tonight is, if the council is interested to go forth and develop the JPA, the Board of Supervisors did give that direction 3 weeks ago, and so before we move forward, we want to make sure the council's on board as well.
And I would just add that maybe members of the Build Rebuild ad hoc could make some comments or talk about some things maybe staff didn't hit on. Just an opportunity there as well.
Thanks, and I will take that opportunity. What you're seeing tonight represents a huge amount of work by our staff, by county staff, by Suzanne from SCTA, RCPA. That's been going on, as David mentioned, since November. I think that those of us on the Build Rebuild Committee, both at the city level and the county level, realized right from the start that we had a huge task in front of us, not just to help people rebuild 5,300 homes that burned down, but that we didn't want to find ourselves 5 years down the road celebrating the completion of that last house out of 5,300 and realize that we're in the same place we are in 2017 when the fires hit. We need to walk and chew gum at the same time. I've said that ad nauseum, but that's what's been going on here, and that's what this represents. You know, the question is what is a red? And slide 9 actually sums it up really well. It's not a sexy slide there, but it's hugely important. This is a regional issue that requires a regional response. And that's what we have here with participation, you know, by everyone here, plus folks like MTC, the Federal Reserve. We have the opportunity to do something special with this initiative. And I just want to say that at our Transportation Authority meeting yesterday, we got a report on the greenhouse gas statistics, the most recent set of statistics on greenhouse gases in Sonoma County. And while we're doing well with buildings with Sonoma Clean Power and things like that, the amount of, the percentage of GHGs in the air from our cars is going up. It's 60% now in Santa Rosa, and that's up, I think, from 52 from 5 years ago or something like that. And the economy obviously has a role in that, but it's about housing. We are going to kill ourselves if we keep making people drive farther and farther to work because they can't afford to live where they work. This targets housing development in the downtown, priority development areas, transit-oriented areas, infill areas. It incentivizes, it requires net zero energy, affordability, and all of the things that we say that we want development to look like in the future in this community. So I hope that we can all support this tonight and welcome comments from other members of the BARB, the Build and Rebuild Committee. Mr. Rogers.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor, and absent a better name for the committee, I think we've done some pretty incredible work, and thank you to the staff for the hours that you've put in week after week. It's been impressive to see as this has evolved. I just want to echo a couple of the comments that the mayor made, that before the fire, the largest economic threat long-term to Sonoma County was the inability for our workforce to live here, in particular for young families to start here or to stay here. And it's been an issue since before that first October 8th night, and it's going to continue to be an issue for a long time. What I particularly like about this approach that we're looking at is, one, it's innovative, and it's something that others haven't tried around the state that should put additional attention on our downtown and attract additional resources to Sonoma County. The other, it's been a little bit of an annoyance that I've had working with some of these projects, is we talk in terms of what can people afford to build, and that doesn't really give us a lot of flexibility or a lot of creativity to say what works for Santa Rosa, what works for Sonoma County. It pretty much is whatever we can get, we're looking to get. What I like about the red is developing the criteria of what type of projects would we not say no to, what fits within our general plan, what fits within our area plans, and how do we streamline what we want to see, that net zero energy, the higher density, the higher development in our downtown area. How do we cut red tape by creating the red in order to attract those projects and move things through the pipeline faster that we all can agree on, instead of getting stuck fighting over minor details. I'm really curious to see how this works over the next couple of years, but I think it'll be a good thing for our community on the whole, even if we don't get additional legislation. But I do know that there's been interest from Sacramento in what we're trying to do in that legislation to try to enhance it. So it'll be an interesting couple of years for us for sure. Thank you.
I want to make sure, are there any questions from council members on this? Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for clarification, first of all, I want to thank you for this really impressive list of requirements and recommendations, and it is impressive and it's exciting, and now I know what this subcommittee's been doing for all these months. It's really very impressive, and I knew basically what was happening, but I didn't expect this. It's really very bold. One question on the staff report on page 4 at the very bottom. It speaks to pooling of affordable housing requirements. And I can understand pooling of funds, but what is the pooling of affordable housing requirements? Last line on page 4 of the staff report. That one kind of mystified me.
Yes, so this would be a concept we would like to explore where if both the city and the county and other jurisdictions are investing, say, in Santa Rosa, or Santa Rosa chooses to invest in, say, Windsor, that those jurisdictions have credit in those RENA allocation numbers. That's what it means.
I wonder if it was RENA, but it wasn't clear, and I appreciate that. And I think that was the only clarification that I needed. Thank you.
Any other questions? I do have a card on this. Bob Hanson.
Good afternoon, everybody. Robert Hanson. In the 3 years I've enjoyed our city council meetings, I've never heard our city council address preserving the quality of life we all enjoy and we all pay for. The discussion I've just listened to is creating housing for a projected immigration population. Whether it's from Mexico, China, India, doesn't matter. The population growth of the people, citizens of the United States is 0, or very close to it. You're asking the families of Santa Rosa to give up the quality of life they enjoy and they pay for. And you're not even giving them a vote on this. You want to put 5,000 houses down on the flats, fine, put it on the ballot. This is a decision that has to be made by the voting public, not 7 members of a city council. This is a construction agenda that will negatively impact the quality of life for the citizens of our city now. And you're not giving the public a vote. You're not putting it on the ballot where it should be. You don't have the authority to promote this. That's not in your job classification. If you want to put 5,000 houses in the city, put it on the ballot. That's a decision that has to be made by the public. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the cards I have. And Mr. Schwedhelm. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also do want to...
I'm sorry.
Oh, wait, there's more.
I have one more card. Ken Callahan? I know I'm not reading that right, but...
No, you're not.
Help me out.
It's Ken Callagher.
Callagher.
Hello, and thank you for this moment. I live in New York. I'm here fortuitously, and this is not a commercial. I just want to make you aware of one thing. I'm in the business of resilient and sustainable product manufacture, and it took me 5 years to put together a company that now manufactures a building panel system that is ICC certified, International Code Council certified. You may remember James Lee Witt as the CEO of that company. It's certified as Class A fireproof. It's certified for seismic resistance to an 11.0 Richter. And it's certified to very extreme winds, 312 miles an hour. It's also very energy efficient. It took me about 7 years to figure out how to buy that company and put it together. And I'm in New York. We manufacture in Southern California, where there are half a dozen LEED gold buildings made with this stuff, including University of California buildings and the Palm Desert Chamber of Commerce, which was the first LEED gold building in Southern California. We would like to establish a presence in Santa Rosa. We'd like to establish a manufacturing facility here. This costs me $8 million or so to do. The point is very simple. I'd like to meet with the Daves. They're a great team. I'd like to meet with any of you to help you out. Sure, we make money doing this, obviously, but there's never been a need. Look, I bought this company a year ago, and all of a sudden, there were 3 hurricanes and wildfires. We had a house in Lake County in September 2015 that was the only house that survived in that area. 3 cars were ruined in the driveway and had to be removed by excavator, and the house only lost a couple of windows. This stuff is massively proven. We've built prisons in Georgia. We've built for the Department of Defense in Afghanistan, forward operating bases. We have NATO ballistic ratings. You can't kill this stuff. And the only way to get ahead of this curve of natural disaster is to make sure your housing stock doesn't go away in the next one. To the mayor's point, building 5,000 houses and having a population growth that needs another 5,000 doesn't work. Well, it sure doesn't work if you lose another $5,000 on the way to 2022, let's say. So in any event, my company is called RSG3D. If you'd like to look it up on the web, there's all kinds of cool drone videos of buildings and things like that. I'll be in town for the next 3 days. I'm here monthly because we care about this region. We think we can help. I appreciate the time, and thanks for letting me barge in. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Calgar. Make sure you give your contact information to one of those Daves. Mr. Schwedhelm. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Tibbetts.
Yeah, if I could chime in just really quick. I just wanted to express my gratitude because I didn't want you to think that my silence was a lack of enthusiasm. I know how much work you put into this, all of you, and also folks who can't be in the room here today. But it seemed like it was touch and go there for a while. I'm really glad to see it here today, and I hope that it moves forward with all the strength that it deserves. I think, in government, the only failure is not to try, and just my hat's off to you for trying and moving this rock up the mountain. You've done spectacular work.
Thank you. Mr. Schwedhelm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to applaud the work that's gotten us to this point. I know when the mayor first formed this ad hoc working with the county, some of those discussions, and having been a staff member, the lack of direction that you're getting from the 3 of us and the 2 of the board could be rather, I know, frustrating at times. But what was nice, and I think this is a great example of this collaboration that we need in this community, where we're not blaming each other and we're not caring who gets the credit. It's the product. We need this. This community needs this. And actually, I think we're stepping up the plate to make this an opportunity. When we had first started, like I say, talking about it, I even had the conversation with Rusty, which I'm not sure if that clarified, slide 10 on my show, on my presentation clarifies a lot more than I got from the hour conversation, but getting our arms around it, that this is gonna make a difference in something new. And I think we are kind of being innovative, and my hope would be other communities in Sonoma County, after 2-year period, they're gonna start seeing the benefits of this collaboration. We are gonna be making a difference. So with that, I'm pleased to make a motion to authorize creation of a renewal enterprise district through a joint powers authority comprised initially of the city of Santa Rosa and the county of Sonoma to facilitate the development of housing in targeted geographic areas.
Second.
And your votes. And that passes with 6 ayes. Thanks very much. We have a few written communications that are in the packet, and Ms. Lobby, you wanted to speak on written communications?
I just want to urge you to do the first 2 of these written communications. One is, I believe, a effort in support of the Journeys Home residents who are looking for some way to keep their community together while the new housing is being built. I was at the supervisors meeting today and heard kind of amazing, touching testimony from some of those folks. It was the parade of the walkers because so many of them are elderly and ill, and it was really heartfelt. request. So thank you for considering it tonight, and also appreciate your help with the issues on the border and the separation of parents and children, and I hope the imprisonment of the parents as well. It's a crime against humanity. I don't think I need to tell you that, but I appreciate your help with it.
Thank you. And those letters have been sent. Have no cards for final public comment, and we are adjourned.